we were so grateful to have him as our minister. He will be here and we'll be celebrating the birthdays of John Lennon and Patty Dorian. Now, we all know who John Lennon is. Who knows who Patty Dorian is? Just two. Ooh. Congratulations. You can get up and do the sermon.
Actually, that's not Pat.
Really? How nice. Okay. Let's do the chalice lighting. Join me in the words that are in your bulletin. We light this chalice to illuminate the world we see.
In our search for truth,
May we be, and in the search for justice, may we be loving. May we find peace. And the story for ages, I don't know what Pat was going to say, but Autumn has volunteered to say something. So we'll, thank you, Autumn.
Doing a little bit of filling in. So I had a story request from Ellery, and today is your day, Ellery. You get your story. So I'm going to be telling everybody the story of Tiny the God. So once upon a time, there was a tiny little itty bitty, very small, tiny little god named Tiny. She lived her life hearing stories of all of the big gods. And well, let's face it, she was jealous. She knew she needed to think of some kind of special spark of an idea that would make her existence meaningful. And she sat up in the clouds, and after watching humans for a long time, she hit upon something that just might work. Something to make people think, yeah, that Tiny has really got a good idea going. This is it. This was going to make her famous. Are you ready? Here it is. You are not alone. She took the form of a very light breeze, and in a voice so quiet each person heard it only in their mind, she said, "You are not alone. You are not alone." People loved it. It was perfect because who doesn't want to hear that? Pretty soon, Tiny was comforting people all over with, "You are not alone." Every evening, she took the form of the breeze and whispered in people's minds until one day she encountered someone who wasn't comforted at all. Miriam heard tiny words in her mind, and instead of feeling comforted, she felt agitated. Something was just kind of off by it. She kept saying it to herself over and over again. "You are not alone. You are not alone." She tossed and turned. She couldn't sleep. And in the morning, she went to read the paper, and instead of skimming everything, she found herself drinking in every story. She was only halfway through when she found herself crying. "I am not alone," she said. "I am connected to each and every one of these people. They live in my town and in my country, in my world. They love their children like I love mine. They're scared sometimes, and so am I. They hurt like I hurt, and I am not alone. I can help." Tiny was surprised. It hadn't occurred to her that someone might think of it that way. So Tiny kept watch over Miriam to monitor this interesting development. Miriam and a coworker met online in a meeting and talked about a law that they hoped the Senate would pass. Tiny noticed when Miriam wrote a letter to her senator about it right away. She noticed that when Miriam turned in her grocery order, that she bought a few extra things for the neighbor, and she left them with a colorful note on the porch. She noticed that Miriam had tears in her eyes, and she joined in her congregation's worship on her computer, and she heard her favorite hymn through the tiny small speakers. Miriam got out her phone and made an extra donation to her congregation. She watched as Miriam wrote postcards to friends and family near and far, waved to dog walkers who passed by her house, and strung up colorful lights in her living room window. But most importantly for Tiny, she noticed when Miriam received a phone call one evening from a friend that she hadn't heard from in a long while. Her voice was shaking. "I'm having a hard time," he said. He started to tell her about his troubles, and he began to cry. Miriam got herself comfortable in her favorite chair. She said, "Take your time. I'll stay on the line with you. You are not alone. I'm here." I'm here. Tiny heard those words like an echo in her mind. You are not alone. I am here. You are not alone. I am here. Can you say that with me? You are not alone. I am here. And in that moment, Tiny knew that she was nothing without Miriam's hands and heart and spirit. And she knew that what she wanted, what the world needed more than anything, was what Miriam had learned to give. So Tiny, the littlest God, went to work. And instead of just spending her evenings spreading the gospel of you are not alone, she spent her night times doing it too, and her mornings and her afternoons. And pretty soon she was spending every moment doing it until she became the breeze itself. And that is why there are no paintings, no statues, no murals, no monuments of Tiny, the God. No bust, no holy books, just the breeze, a low voice, and many, many helping hands, loving hearts and caring spirits. You can hear the echo if you listen closely, because you are not alone. I am here. And when water bottles are left in the desert for those who risk their lives in the desert to cross it, you are not alone. I am here. And at the bedside of a dying man, you are not alone. I am here. In the jailhouse, in the sanctuary, you are not alone. I am here. Separate and together, you are not alone. I am here. So may it be so. And that's our story for all ages. So.
Thank you very much. That was lovely. Okay, thank you. Let's sing out the children. Come on, children. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. I think I see our minister arriving. But meanwhile, we have a reflection centering music from Mike.
Well, surprise, I'm going to do a John Lennon song. It's actually a Beatles song, but it's obviously John Lennon. There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone, and some remain. All these places have their moments with lovers and friends. I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I love them all. But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you. And these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new. Though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them in my life. I love you more.
Perfect timing. We've had the children's service sermon by Autumn, and we're opening words by you.
Oh, wonderful.
How's that for timing? How are you?
Wonderful.
Good timing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm so grateful to be here.
we're glad to have you.
I hit a traffic jam, as I'm sure you've already heard. And I kept telling Siri to find me an alternate route, and she kept dumping me back on 85. And I've been in downtown Dallas twice today. And the First Presbyterian Church in Dallas had a sign up for today's sermon, and it's called An Attitude of Gratitude. So I've been working on my attitude of gratitude as I've dealt with incredible traffic this morning. Let the record show it's never happened before, and I think I have a strategy for making sure it never happens again. I will avoid 85. Our opening words are from John Lennon. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Is it okay for me to sit down for a second?
Oh, do you need to sit down?
No, I don't need to sit down.
No, well, we've done
So everything else is
we've
done.
done the centering music,
All right.
so we're up to the reflection.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. I have a note from Joy International, the folks who ran the Barefoot Mile. We had hoped to raise $17,000 because last year we raised $13,000. So our goal was to increase it to $17,000. And this is their lovely logo, Joy International. They work against childhood trafficking and slavery, the exploitation of children. But as we got closer and closer to the event, it was pretty clear we were going to raise $19,000. And we got our final total the other day, and it was $25,000. So. And their thank you note reads, I cannot imagine to tell you how much I appreciate your support of Joy International. This is to all of us. In the fight against human trafficking, thanks to your support, we raised $25,000 to support the international effort and to support the local safe house in Concord. And it says to tell you that you are all bringing freedom and hope to survivors of human trafficking. And that's from Betsy Hansen, who organized our local effort. It's awful tempting just to check the calendar and deliver a sermon each Sunday about some historical figure whose birthday we might be celebrating. I promise to avoid that temptation, and also the temptation to use I-85 ever again. The theme of imagination keeps creeping into our services. Imagine a world that affirms you values. Imagine our 7 principles taught in schools, affirmed at the highest levels of government power. Imagine all the people living together. Someday you'll join us and the world will live as one. I like looking at Jo Abney because she mouths the words to the song with me while I'm reading. Today is John Lennon's birthday, and not to make those of us who remember him feel old, but he has now been gone longer than he was among us. Regina Burchett's mother, Betty Davis Calton McEwen, is that right? McEwen? Was also born on October 9th. She grew up during the Depression on a small farm with her widowed mother in Hartville, Missouri. She endeavored to teach her children to be open-minded, creative and fair. She was an artist, writer, and businesswoman, and was widowed twice before the age of 45. She loved Edgar Cayce and Ruth Montgomery. She is still terribly missed. She died at the age of 59 and was born the same year as Queen Elizabeth. Regina dreams of her often. And today is Jackson Browne's birthday. He was born 8 years after John Lennon. Kind of makes you wonder when he found out that he shared a birthday with John Lennon, what he thought about that. To say that John Lennon and Jackson Browne have spiced our lives with musical and lyrical wisdom may be as profound an understatement as you'll ever hear. Browne's Song for a Dancer is a beautiful one that any of us might love at the funeral of a special person. Listen to these words. Keep a fire burning in your eye and pay attention to the open sky. You'll never know what might be coming down. I don't remember losing track of you. You were always dancing in and out of view. I must have thought you'd always be around. Always keeping things real by playing the clown. Now you're nowhere to be found. I don't know what happens when people die. I can't seem to grasp it as hard as I try. It's like a song I can hear playing right in my ear that I can't sing, but I can't help listening. And I can't help feeling stupid standing around, crying as they ease you down, because I know that you'd rather we were dancing our sorrows away, right on dancing. No matter what fate chooses to play, there's nothing you can do about it anyway. Just do the steps that you've been shown by everyone you've ever known until the dance becomes your very own, no matter how close to yours another steps have grown. In the end, there is one dance you'll do alone. And what about this Patty Dorian you find on the cover of your order of service, and who I suspect might be watching us online? Like Lennon and Browne and Regina's mother, Miss Dorian was also born on October 9th. She is a dear friend of Lynn Henderson's. Bruce, I guess she's your friend too. You were at her wedding. That was nice of you to show up. She ran the women's shelter in Shelby, North Carolina, and later was executive director of the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence. She is smart and well-spoken and has a keen sense of what it takes to run a large, effective organization. But in the traditions of Lennon and Browne and Regina's mama, she came out ready to see things in a different light, ready to march to the beat of Thoreau's different drummer, ready to make a difference. So many of you are like that. She has a keen eye for social justice and insists on it with her heart and mind and soul. And so do many of you. The Jewish text tells us we must love God that way. But God is simply too abstract a term for many of us. Instead, let us love justice that way. And that way, with all our hearts and minds and souls, will make a difference. Patty Dorian was hired to run the shelter in Shelby the day after she checked a book out of the library and discovered she was a survivor of domestic violence. She'd never heard of it, didn't know what it was. She had been horribly mistreated by her husband, but she survived. She didn't even know what domestic violence was until the shelter board scheduled an interview with her to become their executive director. She slept the night before in her car and showered at a friend's house. This is the kind of irrepressible human spirit that has gone with Jim Price to care for Sue during these past weeks, that has gone with Eddie and Naomi as they have cared for each other, that has gone with others among us who have faced the strange and baffling turns of life. We like to celebrate joy, but sometimes we must, as Shakespeare advised, screw our courage to the sticking place and do what has to be done. Sometimes we have to do hard things. Patty Dorian did hard things in working against domestic violence. Her former husband tried to run her down in a parking lot after she stood with Whoopi Goldberg on television and told part of her story. John Lennon and Yoko Ono did hard things in protesting the Vietnam War and begging us to give peace a chance. Jackson Browne urged us to keep on dancing, even as we have to grieve those we lose to death. And Regina's dear mama, Betty Davis Calton McEwen, urged her children to be open-minded, creative, and fair. And we know all that can sometimes be a hard thing too. Is it ever enough? Is doing hard things, good things, standing up for others in the rough patches of life, is it ever enough? We certainly think so here in this gathering. We affirm that other people are of value, even as we affirm our own value. Of the 4 people affirmed in this message this morning, the only one I have known personally is Patty Dorian. And I never spent time around her that I wasn't inspired by her tenacity. Sure, she's smart. Nobody who knows her would deny her good brain that holds her good mind. But smart people can relax into the narrow ruts of their lives, gaining what they can from their smart brains. But Patty does not do that. She is always looking for ways to expand the playing field for other people, to push back against injustice, male supremacy, boneheaded selfishness on the parts of those who sit atop life's heaps and do little or nothing to help others. Ultimately and finally, I think this will be the test of Unitarian Universalism. I could be wrong, but it feels to me that we must be tenacious. This gathering has certainly been tenacious, determined, hardworking, even relentless in our pursuit of a more just, more humane, kinder world. As I said 2 weeks ago, I'm so grateful to Arvind Patel for saying our UU filter is found in our common humanity, our common humanity. One of my favorite UU stories comes from Emilio Troca. When he was 8 years old, he walked up to a bully on the playground and asked, "How would you feel if somebody were treating you the way you're treating that guy?" And the bully backed off and went away in shame. It was enough. The UUA publishes a poster featuring 13 world religions and their versions of the Golden Rule. They are almost indistinguishable from each other. They all can be roughly translated as, how would you feel if somebody were treating you the way you're treating that guy? But let's put the shoe on the other foot for just a moment. How would you feel if you had to keep your dog on a chain and you couldn't afford to build a fence for that dog, and a bunch of people in green t-shirts came to your house and built you a dog fence? How would you feel if you were trying to make a new home for your family in the U.S. and you were greeted at the Charlotte bus station by people with food and clothing and a telephone that translates your native tongue into English, and an extremely funny man wielding that telephone around? Or what about folks with a strained food budget who can find food and a hot lunch at Feed NC in Mooresville? And finally, in honor of Lynn Henderson and Patty Dorian, how would you feel if you had been beaten by somebody who was supposed to love you, and a group of people provided you with shelter, safety, and counseling to begin rebuilding your life in light of your new harsh reality? How would you feel? So many of us are comfortable. How would we feel if we were in crisis and somebody came along with an offer of help? Unitarian Universalists have always been more about what we do than what we believe. It's a pretty simple formula, really. Food for the hungry, clothing, visits and aid for the sick and imprisoned. We show what we believe by what we do for each other and for the wider world. Years ago, ABC News conducted an experiment. They found 10 people who had never volunteered, never given to a charitable organization, basically had never acted unselfishly for the benefit of strangers. They tested these 10 people for basic happiness, good health, and positive attitudes. And then they assigned them to work in a soup kitchen for a month. They fed people who were hungry, food distressed, many of them homeless. And after working in the soup kitchen for just 30 days, they were tested again, and their basic happiness, good health, and positive attitudes were all improved. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
Well, it's surprised we're going to play another John Lennon song. You know, John was always will be a controversial figure because he was as the probably the most successful songwriter of all time. He was a rich guy that was telling people to find peace. We're like, what? Why are you doing that? Why are you sleeping in bed on your honeymoon? So he was always pushing authority and establishment. But John understood because he came from he was raised by his aunt. His father left when he was 3, and they gave it to the wife, and she couldn't keep John. She gave it to her sister to raise. So he had a lot of angst as a youth. Instant karma's gonna get you, gonna knock you right on the head. Better get yourself together. Pretty soon you're gonna be dead. What in the world you thinking of? Laughing in the face of love. What on the earth you trying to do? It's up to you, yeah, you. Instant karma's gonna get you. Gonna look you right in the face. Better get yourself together, darling. Join the human race. How in the world are you gonna see? Laughing at fools like me. Who on earth do you think you are? A superstar? Well, right you are. We all shine on like the moon and the stars and the sun. We all shine on. Everyone, come on. Instant karma's gonna get you. Gonna knock you right off your feet. Better recognize your brothers. Everyone you meet. Why in the world are we here? Surely not to live in pain and fear. Why on the earth are you there? Well, you're everywhere. Come and get your share. We all shine on like the moon and the stars and the sun. We all shine on. Everyone, come on. I tried to slow it down so you could hear the words.
Yeah, well, I thought the music and then the talk back. So, yeah, I wasn't going to forget the talk back. Come on over. And if there's any questions or comments from the reflection or the music?
If anybody has anything they want to say, I'm going to repeat the question because I've watched this service online and we can't hear your questions. We can only hear what's up here.
Either that or come up and ask them.
Oh, come up. Yeah. Come on up. Anybody got anything they want to say?
I wanted to add something to your wonderful tribute, Patty. And I'll come up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, come on up. I think Patty's watching. I'm not sure.
I hope she is. Two things I'll add. Patty is now very happily married. And yes, Pat did the honors and we were there at the wedding a number of years ago. But in you saying put the shoe on the other foot, she also did that in a very unique way. Patty devoted a lot of energy and time, as Pat has told you, to working on behalf of domestic violence survivors, rape survivors. But then she did sort of a little reverse on that. She became executive director of a group in Charlotte called NOVA, which stands for New Options for Violent Action. And this program seeks to work with the violators, the people who have been sent by the court into the court system because of committing domestic violence. And if you're sentenced into this program, as part of your sentence, then you go to weekly groups where you talk with therapists, you talk with regular people, and you learn to examine your own emotions. You learn to change your habits. And so Patty served as director for that as well, helping the people who were creating some of this violence try to learn new options. And I worked with her in that. I worked with her with the Shelby Women's Shelter, and that's how I met Pat through some other work that he was doing as well. So Patty's a great woman. And lastly, she was the reason I first set foot in the Unitarian Church.
Oh, how wonderful.
Because the congregation in Asheville was hosting a celebration of people in the general region who were doing good things out in the community. And two of my friends were being honored, and Patty was one of them. And so that was the first time I went to a UU church. But Patty, if you're watching, we thank you for all you've done.
And happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Anybody else? And it really does help if you come up here if you have something to say, because the folks watching at home cannot hear you. Anything. Okay.
Okay. Can you do a little Imagine?
Yeah.
Do you have that music?
I don't know if I know the lyrics all that right.
Oh, I've got the lyrics from 2 weeks ago.
I know them, but it's just having them in order.
Yeah.
Help me sing along. I played 3 gigs yesterday, so I have no voice left. This morning I'm struggling. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above the sunny sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion to. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can.
Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
Thank you. I love the words, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one, and I know I'm among others here. Thanks, Pat, for your words. You made it. And Mike, for your music. This fellowship is important to us. I'm going to pass around the basket. Let's see, I'll start with Nancy.
We give part of the offering today to the Florida folks.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, if you write a check or designate somehow that it goes to the what is it, the relief fund, yeah. It will go to Florida for the terrible things that have happened down there. Yeah. The contributions we make today allow us to sustain and grow our congregation and to reach out to the community nearby and far, Florida, etc. Okay. With grateful hearts, we receive these gifts. Okay. With grateful hearts, we receive these gifts. May they encourage us to live lives of integrity, compassion, and peace. Now look in your bulletin here. Oh, go ahead. Put it. You want to say it?
Ministry,
Yeah.
the dates and the addresses are not right, so I want to get that correct.
Okay, can you give us the real dates?
Yes, it's next.
Next Saturday, there's an animal, there's a fence build.
Next Saturday, the 15th is going to be the one on McIntosh Road.
Okay, okay.
And we're also going to have a build on the 29th for 7 dogs.
No.
29th.
Okay, the 29th, they're doing 7 dogs, and next Saturday, they're doing 1 dog.
That's it.
Is it 7 times as hard to do 7 dogs as 1 dog?
In this particular case, yes, it's going to be.
Uh-huh. Okay, we're grateful to the animal ministry for their wonderful work that they do. And other announcements, let's see, we have movies and anyway, you can read in here what other announcements there are. And the closing song, which I have wrong on my, I don't know why I didn't change the 123, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me.
Sing in my heart all the songs
of compassion,
in the wind, rise in the sea,
move in the hand, give life shape of justice, roots rolling close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
and that's it. I always forget to tell everybody to stand, but you're all pretty good at that. And now we have closing words from Pat.
Our closing words are from Jackson Brown. Keep on dancing. Just do the steps that you've been shown by everyone you've ever known. Go in peace. Be sweet to each other.
keep on dancing. I think that's how that song goes. I like that. I forgot all about that song. Okay, now we extinguish the chalice and say the words that are in the bulletin. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you. Thank you.